Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your understanding yesterday. I appreciate those of you who commented on the post and just, acknowledged my situation. I really do appreciate that. So hello, I am Dr. Lappin. I answer to Sarah. I'll answer to anything respectful. Um, and let me tell you, first of all, just like update on my husband. Um, we were in the ER for several hours yesterday. He got a CAT scan and stuff like that. There's no evidence of a seizure. The doctor in the ER believes that he's exhibiting symptoms of atypical migraines. Um, and he's actually at the primary care physician as I record this, getting some further tests and all that kind of stuff. So, um, seems positive, staying hopeful, always a little bit scary, always a lot scary, but I'm just like, I'm always kind of a little bit anxious, having a health scares with partners is very scary for me. um, so again, I appreciate your understanding. I appreciate your grace. I did some calculations. We should be, based on how I run Practicum, fine with our timeline. Um, so we have um, essentially 13 weeks of class this coming week on January 20th. We'll do some case consultations. Um, and then if anyone does want to present, I know that Steph and Addie have had me before, so you know my presentation format. If either of you would care to present and kind of start us off, you are more than welcome to, no pressure. But we'll have essentially 12 presentation weeks. And I'm going to ask each of you to do three presentations. So if my math is correct, 3 times 8 is 24. We have essentially 24 presentation slots. I think we're going to be okay. So what I wanted to do in this video is what I would have done yesterday in our live class. So let me go ahead and share my screen um, and go over the syllabus. So I will have office hours this semester. I plan to put all of this information in an announcement. So I will add my office hours, just so everybody knows they are on Fridays from 10 to noon Pacific. I'm in Eastern time. I am in um, Michigan, so my schedule is a little bit before yours. So right now it is 6:45 in the morning Pacific that I am recording this, but 9:45 my time. So I will give you this link so you can pop in here um, whenever you want some extra questions or anything like that. I like to make myself very available. If that time doesn't work for you, I'm always willing to make a meeting with you outside of those hours, making sure that it works for both of us. Okay, so I know that at least some of you are not in Practicum 1. So you have had other faculty members or other just, professors who have run this class for you. I do it a little bit differently. Um, so first and foremost, you will not have to write, with the exception of your final paper, your competency paper, anything for this class. So I don't need a write-up for any of your case consultate or your case conceptualizations. I don't need any transcripts from you. I like to have this be like a very experiential class. So with that said, instead of 4 presentations, I ask for 3. I just like basically waive that 4th grade. Um, and all of my presentations, I think would maybe fall more into the informal presentation, but a little bit more formal, so maybe it's like a combination of the two. So let me go to essentially what I'll be asking you to do every time you present. So let me go to the like it's the I basically use the formal write-up. Um, where is it? Sorry, I should have probably prepped this a little bit better. 'Cause I know there's is there not a format in here for it? Maybe it's at the end. Sorry, y'all. Let me go fast. Close your eyes if you get dizzy or sick. While I find this. Okay, here it is. Yes, this is so use Appendix A. So here's what I want. Instead of you writing all of this up, I will be asking you to put it in a PowerPoint. So it doesn't have to be APA. You can use bullet points. So I'll be asking, uh, I mean, feel free to use this information if you want. I don't really care about this information because I know who you are. I will know the site by this point in the semester. I will have already made contact with your supervisor. You guys will have told me which practicum you're in. And then, but I do want how many sessions you've had with your client so far. It'll give us just a little bit of a context about like, where you feel like you're at in building the rapport, where you're at in your treatment plan, things like that. So I will ask for this demographic. So think of like A, B, C, D. Think of all of those as separate slides. So you'll go on first slide, demographic information. This is a 13-year-old female woman, child, 13-year-olds are not women, 13-year-old girl, who is, of whatever cultural background. Also, feel free to put whatever um, social position type of information that you find relevant. So like for example, a 13-year-old, you probably don't have to add marital status. You very well may not know their sexual orientation or their religion. That's okay. Just whatever information that like helps situate them a little bit. Um, Presenting problem will be another slide for you. I will say, okay, so this is my like bias um in just the way that I do therapy and conceptualize cases. I tend to really not deal or like I tend to not incorporate things like mental status exam, interview affect and behavior. I know that these are like if you do SOAP notes or DAP notes or anything like that, these are aspects that are, very common in that. Um, to me, it is appropriate for notes depending on where you are placed. Um, and many times this is necessary for insurance. Um, but if you, I don't know, I mean, if anything feels maybe off in this of like, maybe this client comes in kind of disheveled, very, very tired. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Maybe there's something going on with their housing situation, with their, who they live with, things like that. This type of language feels very like sterile and like unnecessarily clinical to me. That's, just being your practicum instructor, that is just my bias. If you want to add this, feel free. So what I'm inviting you to do is like essentially not to do C. Um, with the history, uh, feel free to add any relevant information here. Um, this like the history D, E, these types of things. Also, make sure that you are being cognizant of like whose voice it is. So let's say, for example, you are working in a school and you get like history of the presenting problem from a teacher or from a principal or from a parent or something like that, be explicit in stating that, because it's a biased perspective. I mean, everyone's perspective is biased in one form or fashion. So I really want to get y'all thinking about like power, control, agency, voice, things like that. So be specific in like whose voice you are privileging in the history of the presenting problem. Also, family history, who did you hear this from? What do you make of that? So here I know it says like, do not interpret them. You're going to interpret them. So if you have an interpretation of it, go ahead and interpret it. Um, so all of these history pieces, you can also fold these into one slide if you want them all to have their own slide, no problem. But just again, letting you know, I don't need a formal write-up where you can just like bullet point this stuff on a slide. And you're just gonna talk and contextualize your case before you show us your video. Um, so also with this like history of any previous treatment, for those of you who, well, like for all of you, one thing that I am going to encourage you to do, when you start any treatment or therapy with a new person, when you're asking them about their previous treatment, I encourage you to ask things like, what did you like? What was helpful? What didn't you like? Maybe was there anything that was confusing? Was there anything about your experience that you would have changed? Were there ever times where maybe you felt unseen, not heard, not understood? These are all questions that help give your client agency. And also it's really important information for you in continuing to build that therapeutic alliance. So rather than things like, again, these are all pretty clinical. That's okay. I'm just thinking about like when you're actually in the room with the person and you want to show up as a human being, like what kind of questions would make sense. So what I always say is I want to do none of what didn't work for you, and I want to do as much as possible of what you found helpful. So it's just like really trying to start off the relationship, letting them know your voice is important, your perspective is important, you are a co-pilot in this process, all of that fun stuff. Okay, K. This is also a bias of mine. I don't, so I am in, potentially what would be considered a privileged position. I do more or less private practice. I do work for like an online platform. It's not BetterHelp, I promise. I wouldn't do that to myself. I don't encourage any of you to do it either. When you get out there, it's a pretty exploitative platform, but I digress. So I come from like I work from more of a feminist informed perspective. And for those of you who you've all taken theories, if you remember from a feminist perspective, um, they don't deal in the DSM. They find diagnoses essentially like part of the patriarchy, an oppressive practice. Yes, I understand if you work with insurance and we work within certain systems that necessitate this. If you want practice at going through assessing and diagnosing, great. I totally encourage you to do that. If you don't want to do this piece, don't do this piece. What I will ask, potentially either in place of K or in addition to K, is what is called Bronfenbrenner's socioecological model. I should have had this um, pulled up, but let me go to some images. So I really want to, let's see. Yes, perfect. So we'll go here. Hopefully I can make this nice and big. Okay, yes. So this is just from Simply Psychology. You can find this anywhere. But what I really want to impart in all of you this semester is really thinking in terms of systems. So whether or not you have an individual in front of you, whether you have a family in front of you with a couple in front of you, or like a relationship, I guess, in front of you, I want you to be thinking about your case in these terms. So, even like, let's say you have a family. Each family member is an individual who is a part of each of these systems. So, what I would like for you to do is on a slide, you'll list out the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, the macrosystem, and the chronosystem, and various aspects that fit into those systems. So, my computer just like it's working really hard right now. um, so what I want you to do, so the microsystem is any like essentially people or entities that have a direct influence and consistent interaction with the individual. So let's say you're working with a couple, you would do essentially like on Bronfenbrenner's model for each person. Obviously, well, not maybe not obviously, they're going to be in each other's microsystem. Okay, microsystem, people or entities that have a direct influence on the person. So here you can see examples of like people at work, their friends, neighbors, family members, maybe people at the school, particularly if this is a child. The mesosystem is the interaction between microsystems. So let's say your individual is a child. Let's say we have parents in here and school, like school members in the microsystem. You're going to be talking about like what's the interaction like between this child's parents and maybe administration or teachers at this school. So how do aspects or members within the microsystem interact with one another? Okay, the exosystem is entities, people that indirectly impact the individual. So again, I'll go with the example of a child. Let's say that maybe the child's parents or caregivers work environment that directly influences a person within the microsystem that then directly impacts the individual. But what's happening in the exosystem has an indirect effect on the individual. So let's say that the parents work in a really stressful, maybe like toxic work environment, and then they're coming home and I don't know, maybe being frustrated or unavailable or I don't know, whatever at home, that work environment fits within the exosystem because it indirectly impacts the individual. Here you can see local governments, things like policies, laws, mass media, because, like, yes, they may consume it, but the media itself indirectly impacts parents, friends, extended family. So these are some examples in this one. The macro system is more like societal messages, societal, maybe like think about this from a narrative perspective of like dominant discourse. Like what are some of the rules and that we kind of have to live by? So here you can see in the macro system social norms. So here you could talk about like gender norms. Maybe you have, for example, a person who is that they identify as trans, so they have to like live essentially in this like very binary world. They likely get misgendered, things like that. So these social norms about like a binary gender identity or something like that, or like what is beauty, if they are, for example, an immigrant, like they have an immigrant status, what's it like for them with this current administration? If they are, even part of a ethnicity, like what are the maybe even the cultural role, like norms, economic system, are they considered high, medium, low socioeconomic status? How does their economic status affect, just how they navigate the world, how they are received by the world? So I'm just giving you examples here, political systems. And then chronosystem is over time. So these are things that you can talk about, like even events that preceded the existence of this person. So let's say, again, for example, you are working with a first generation client. What was the immigration experience prior to this? Like, what kind of maybe influence does that have on how they were raised? The how safe they feel, things like that. This can also just be kind of formative events that have happened in their life. Maybe you're working with an individual who got divorced several years ago. What happened, uh, you know, talking about what happened prior to the divorce, during the divorce, post divorce, just like how they've been affected by that. So just think about chronosystem as formative events or maybe historical influences on the individual. So that is what I would like for you to do. Again, either in lieu of K or in addition to that. So I really want you to start thinking about your client as embedded within these various systems and um, how they're affected by it, how they're informed by them. Um, so treatment plan, great. You don't have to go into a ton of detail about this. So with this presentation, y'all, I'm thinking between like 15 and 25 minutes for this. So I don't want you to necessarily like blow through it, but I promise you, generally these presentations are a little bit longer than they need to be. They have a little bit more information than we need as like listeners and learners of your case. So this is also your opportunity to really discern, what is important. So like adjunctive services, you don't have to go into great detail about that. Any ethical legal considerations, like if there's none, just say none. Of course, everyone with ethical stuff, they'll say like confidentiality, privacy, like we know you don't have to give us these things that are just given. But maybe ethically, for example, you have some serious self of the therapist stuff coming up. Like maybe that would be to me like a more relevant self or ethical issue. So you don't have to give equal weight to each piece of this. Prognosis, I never really find this very helpful. Generally, people say it's like favorable or good. If you're struggling, so here's the thing is these, don't think of these as like check marks that you have to go through. Be thoughtful in each of these of like, do I need feedback on this? Am I struggling with this? So if the prognosis is like poor, maybe that's a talking point. Maybe we can talk that through with you. Maybe we can brainstorm stuff with you. But yeah, just giving you like, I want you to be thoughtful of how you spend these like 15 to 25 minutes in here. Um, and again, you don't need to cover everything. The parts that I really do want you to look like that I'm looking for is Braun from Brenner and R. Um, R and S. So R is self of the therapist stuff. So this is a really big part of how I do supervision. I really want you to look within yourself and ask yourself, what is coming up for me with this case? How do I feel toward my client? Um, how do I relate to my client? How do I like my client? Just like I really want to foster a space of safety where you can be very honest. Just things like what's coming up for you. So I'll give an example here of like one thing that all of you will come to know, and I'm telling you right now, is I lost my mom to cancer this month, and actually in 10 days it'll be 12 years ago. So, whenever I have a client who is going through kind of the grief process of losing a parent, 'cause I was 28 when I lost my mom. That's pretty young. And she had fought cancer for many years. She had a, valiant battle and all of that, fun language around it and stuff. So things I have to pay attention to is like, for example, let's say, I'll just start off the vulnerability here of some like stuff that comes up for me. Let's say, for example, I have a client who's um, like 95-year-old grandparent is sick and they're really struggling with it. I have to really balance apathy and empathy because I'm like, man, what a privilege it would be to even know what somebody is like at 95. Because I go back to my mom. Also, just another piece of this is I wasn't close with any of my grandparents. So I don't really know what a relationship like that is. So I have a hard time sometimes relating to it. It's the same as, I never grew up with animals, people who like really, really love animals. I just have a hard time connecting with that feeling. So like let's say I have a client who's struggling with the, illness of a grandparent who's been on the planet for a good amount of time. They've lived a good life. I struggle with empathy in those moments. I struggle to connect to their grief, to their struggle. Um, I also have to be very aware when I've had many clients who have lost their parents in a very similar fashion to me, at a very similar age to me, that I have to be very aware of my own story and how I may, miss asking questions because I'm making assumptions about their experience or or I may relate very closely where maybe I'm responding more like a friend than I am a therapist. Maybe I'm losing some of my quote unquote objectivity, which is just, a little bit of emotional distance, essentially, is what that is, because I don't believe any of us are objective. So these are examples of some things. That I'm struggling to empathize, I'm struggling to understand, I'm relating very closely, I'm feeling very insecure, I feel very protective. Like these are things that I want us to really talk about. um, and then the last piece will be very important for your presentation, for the video, is I want you to be thoughtful about why you chose this video. I know some of you will say like, well, I just started practicum. I like really only have this case. But like really look at it before you present it to us and like, how can we help? What do you want us to look for? What is specific feedback that would be helpful for you that you can walk away from class saying like I gained something. So that is, yeah, um that's what I'm expecting and hoping for with these presentations. Practicum placement form, I believe this is due this coming week, like either January 20th or January 27th, something like that. This is really important for me because I'll be reaching out to your practicum site supervisor. And then this, in many ways, is kind of information that I've asked you to provide me in lieu of class. So just make sure that you are turning that in. I don't really go by the assignment rubrics. Um, so we don't have to look too much into this. Anything else? Mm, okay, so just a moment here. I will go back up to maybe week 15. Okay, so the competency project. What you'll notice is there's a different paper for each practicum that you are in. So if you're in practicum 1, you'll be doing a paper on client retention and attrition. If you're in practicum 2, you'll be doing a paper on self-care. And then if you're in practicum 3, essentially you'll be doing an updated theory of change paper. For those of you in Practicum 3, I do not need a corresponding formal case presentation. I just want you to do your theory of change. So think about this as like two parts. I only want one part of it. Um, yeah, so yeah. I mean, it's part one is the paper. So basically just disregard part two. Um, okay, so with presentations, like I said, the PowerPoint, like portion of it. I want like a maximum of 25 minutes. And then my hope is that we'll get like 10 to 15 minutes of video. And then we can give feedback as a group for 15 to 20 minutes. I do expect each of you to at least participate once. So here's something that I'll also be adding to our my computer's thinking to this announcement. Come on. Here we go. So I have created this sign up sheet. So next week, if I think we'll likely have oh my goodness, did I accidentally close out of it? Of course. Um recent. Here we go. So next week, I do think that we will have time probably for one presentation. So if a brave person wants to go next week, great. Otherwise, I want you to sign up for 3 slots. So I hope that y'all can hear me. I hope my stuff isn't freezing up too badly. So sign up for 3 presentation slots. Presentations will be between an hour, hour and a half. I want to give an hour and a half since we have a 3-hour class, just for more in-depth conversation, a more in-depth kind of analysis, feedback. I tend to be quite robust in my feedback. So also feel free to give me feedback about the volume of my feedback. Um, what else? And then individual meetings for the very last week of class. I already have them set up for you. So I do small meetings in 20-minute increments. So I've signed each of you up. I just basically went alphabetical order for these. So our last week of class, you'll only be with me for 20 minutes. But yeah, sign up for 3 slots here, hour to an hour and a half. And then any leftover time that we have in class, we can do some case consultation. So yeah, I think that that is all I have for you. Again, thank you for your grace. Thank you for your understanding. I'm really looking forward to working with all of you this semester. And I will see you on Tuesday. Bye.